In this video, we'll be covering LeetCode problem 921, minimum add to make parentheses valid. The problem states that a parentheses string is valid if and only if it falls into one of three conditions. So 1, it's an empty string. 2, it can be written as A, B, or two strings that are both valid. Or 3, it can be written as a single valid string. We're given in the problem a parentheses string called S, and in one move, we can insert a single parentheses at any position. Now, our goal here is to figure out the minimum number of moves required to make S valid. Let's take a look at an example to start out. So here we have a string of a bunch of parentheses, and we have the different indices of the characters in the string. And the question is, how many parentheses do we need to insert in order to make this valid? Now, you may think maybe we can just count the number of open parentheses and count the number of closed, and just take the difference of the two, and that will be our answer. Unfortunately, that won't work because we need to actually keep track of the order in which the open and closed parentheses occur. So let's take a look at a way we might do this. So let's just start by iterating through the characters in the string. So we can have some sort of counter, maybe a pointer or an index, that keeps track of which character we're on. And we start with this character here at index 0, and we see that it's an open parentheses. This means that we would need a closed parentheses in order to match it. So I'll just add 1 to our closed counter. Then let's go to the next one. So here at index 1, we see that this is a closed parentheses. That's great because we already know we needed a closed parentheses over here. And so all we need to do is we can just take that closed parentheses and change this to 0. Let's keep going. So now at index 2, we see that we have another closed parentheses. Now what that means is now we actually need an open one in order to match this here. And so what we'll do is we're just going to increment this open counter to 1. And then let's keep going. So here we see that we have another open parentheses. We're going to need a closed one to match it. And so what we'll do is we'll just increment our closed counter to 1, meaning we need another closed parentheses. Keep going to the character index 4. So here we see that this is a closed parentheses. So we're going to need an open one to match it. Now, luckily, we see that our closed counter over here is at 1, meaning we already knew we needed 1 closed parentheses. So we can use this one at index 4 to meet that requirement. So I'll just change this back to 0. And then let's keep going. So here we see we have another open parentheses. That means we're going to need a closed one. So I'll change this to 1. And then we keep going here. We see that we have another open parentheses, which means we're going to need a closed one to match it. So we'll change this here to 2. And then finally, for our very last character, we see that we have an open parentheses and we need a closed one to match it. And so let's change this closed to 3. So here we've gone through the entire string and we've counted up the number of closed parentheses we need and the number of open. And so our final answer is simply going to be the sum of the two. So it's going to be the number of closed, so 3, plus the number of open, 1. And so that gives us a total of 4. So 4 is our final answer. Hopefully that logic and intuition makes sense. So let's take a look at how we might code this up. So I'll be coding this in C++. So here we have our function. It returns an integer, which is the number of moves we need to make, and it takes in a string S. So to start, I'm going to set up our counters, the closed and the open. And so we can just declare those as integers. Closed is going to start at 0, and so is open. So they both start at 0. And then what we want to do is we want to iterate through the string, just like we did with that pointer. And so to do that, we can just use a range-based iterator So here we're going to go from the very first character, so I equals 0, I is less than s dot size, and then I plus plus, so we go through each character. And then when we want to extract a character, we want to check, is it open or closed? So what we can do is we can say if s at index I is equal to a open parentheses, wants both of them, then what we're going to do is we're going to increment our closed counter. So we can just do close plus plus. Otherwise, so if it's an open parentheses, we increment our closed counter. Otherwise, let's go down here. If s at index I is equal to a closed parentheses, right? Kind of have two options. So if our closed counter is greater than 0, then we just subtract from our closed counter. So here we'll have this case. If closed is greater than 0, we can just do closed minus minus. Otherwise, closed is not greater than 0, so it must be equal to 0. That means we need to add an open parentheses. So we just do open plus plus. Let's take this space away. And so this will allow us to iterate through our entire string. Now, once we're done, we'll have a final count of the number of closed and the number of open. And so all we need to do is we just need to return closed plus open as our final answer. So let's submit this and see how it works. Awesome. So it looks like that worked, and that's our solution.